Welcome very, very much to Conversation. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program a friend of the world. That's Robert or Bob Gumbs, and he's here at MNN considerable part of the time. He's getting himself in a position to become a producer. He's a very well-informed person. He's got a very interesting personal background, and he's involved with the, he's part of the outreach committee for the Wall Street occupation effort that's going on here in October of 2011. We're going to be talking about that. But Bob, welcome again. So good to see you again.
Good to be
welcome
back.
to the set. Now, Robert, why don't you share with us a little bit? Maybe just do we've done programming with you in the past, and we've become friends. But you were in the military for quite a while. You've had a very interesting background, and you also were also for some period of time involved on the interior of the what's called the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Well, that's correct.
Well, let me just spell it. That's similar to the CIA, except it's 5 times larger and 5 times more secret than the CIA. But I note in television reporting by mainline media, where it hadn't come out much before, there are increasing references to the DIA, the same way that the CIA is often referred to, like engineering the Bay of Pigs and so forth. But I just mentioned that. But do share a little bit of your own background, and then we're going to get down and we want to hear all about what the Outreach Committee has to say about the Wall Street occupation. But share your own background in a quick summary, if you would.
Well, I spent a good part of my life in the military. First, during Vietnam. I went in the military when I was 17.
Yeah.
At that time, I did a couple of years in the Army, and then I came home and began going to college. And after a few years of that, I went back in the military. And the second time I went in, I chose the Navy.
You enlisted?
Right, I enlisted. And I spent 11 years
that's a long time.
in the Navy. Mostly sea duty on aircraft carriers. But
you were on the Nimitz, were you not?
Yeah, that was my first ship.
Yeah.
And then after the Nimitz, after 3 years on board the Nimitz, I did 4 years at the Pentagon.
It was 4 years, right?
Yeah,
okay.
and I was assigned to the Defense Intelligence Agency, commonly referred to as DIA.
Yeah, not as commonly referred to in the press as it's increasingly becoming, it seems to me, as crucial talks begin to start emerging around this presidential election.
Let me point out that the DIA is essentially to me, you would say it's essentially the CIA in uniform.
CIA in uniform, but it's got 5 times the budget, and there's been references to it that whereas the CIA has some oversight, that there isn't nearly the congressional oversight. It's more secretive than the CIA. At least I've seen writings to that effect. And it's coming up more and more in terms of the military grasp of the United States going out and engulfing the entire planet with increasing strength.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem that the American people are going to have to deal with. I did my 4 years at the Pentagon, after which I went back to a fighter squadron. And that fighter squadron was assigned to the USS Saratoga.
Was that an aircraft?
That's an aircraft carrier.
Yeah. Okay. Are those super carriers?
No, the Saratoga was, fortunately, it's no longer commissioned.
Okay.
It wasn't in that great a shape.
Yeah.
When we were on it.
The Nimitz was a super carrier, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was and still is.
Yeah, that is. That's where.
Okay. And that's where we went to the first Gulf War.
Yeah, and it gets
on the Saratoga.
Over in Benghazi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we hit Benghazi when I was on the Nimitz.
On the Nimitz, that's what I meant. The Nimitz. Yeah.
And the first Gulf War, I did that with the Saratoga.
Yeah, the Saratoga. Okay, those aircraft carriers are amazing. And it's worth repeating also, when you were at the DIA in Washington, you were assigned there, and you were enlisted, man, but you were in a condition where you had a security clearance that got you into and out of the White House with great
Well, yeah,
regularity, and of all the offices there, it was a high security that you were granted in order to be in the position of responsibility.
I had what they call, as a matter of fact, I still have it. You never lose your clearance.
Is that true?
That's true,
Okay.
unless you've been convicted of a felony or something of that nature.
Yeah.
It becomes activated or deactivated.
But you were right in on a lot of the White House and so forth.
Yes.
In a regular kind of way, like I would go to Starbucks or something. Or no, I mean you because it's hard for most people to get in there unless you're press or something. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, if I
have clearance for the White House and notifying people of things that were of great importance in terms of the operation.
When I needed to go in there, I can go in there, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's pretty rare in a certain sense. Anyway, so you've done that. You served your time, then you came out, and now you've become, on your own initiative, you're very well read, very well understanding the human condition, as we know, and then you've started a thing called the Concerned Forum, right?
Yes.
And that's a thing of your own development, and that is because you've become concerned with the political context of this country and so forth. And
exactly.
Maybe it'd be worth our segueing into that now,
yeah.
before we get right down to what's going on at Wall Street.
Okay. Well, basically, what the Concerned Forum is about, it's about me attempting to construct a blog about the political issues that are confronting the American people, and which they have to, number one, take notice of and begin to think intelligently about.
Okay, the people of the country should, yeah.
Exactly. And as far as thinking intelligently about them.
And critically.
Well, yeah, and critically.
Thinking, yeah.
That has not been happening over
fair.
the last 20, 30 years.
Right.
If it had, we would not be in the situation that we're in today.
And what situation are we in today? Do you refer to the Iraq War? Do you refer to Afghanistan? Do you refer to the tax cut to the wealthy 30 years ago goes back to Mr. Reagan?
I refer to all three of those that you just mentioned.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
The war in Iraq, that was a war crime.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that, except you notice as long as you can keep the edge in terms of weaponry, nobody ever goes in the dock for war crimes if you are, in the sense, on the side of the winners. You've noticed. It's only the losers go into a war crimes tribunal.
Well, I'll tell you, as a veteran, I feel extremely angry about this invasion of Iraq.
It was something, it was really, yeah.
I think, well, actually...
April Glasby and all that?
I think in terms of the guys who stormed the beach in '44 at Normandy.
Yeah.
And the guys who fought at the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
You know, we did not fight that war and put Nazis in the docket at Nuremberg for us to basically do the same thing that they did.
You think that holds? That's that bad, yeah?
Anytime why do we invade Iraq?
Well, you tell me. I just did a program that aired today, as you and I tape, with a guy who has a comedy book or a satirical book about George Hannibal Bush. They're making a play on him and the battle of the Little Big Oil Well, instead of the Little Bighorn.
Well,
and they're making a thing. And Ramsey Clark and his coterie did set up after it a war crimes tribunal, a people's tribunal that convinced the whole gaggle of people involved with war crimes. But as far as the International Criminal Court or something, it never happens to the winners.
Well, I can't, as a
or
moral,
the power elite,
as a moral person, or more explicitly, as a person that tries to be moral, I can't allow myself to think like that.
Okay.
We went to Nuremberg. I think it was right what we did to punish the Nazis.
Okay.
Those are the standards that we set, and we have an obligation not only to the rest of the world, but to ourselves, to live up to those standards. And when we find people who do not live up to those standards, they're supposed to be punished. It's that simple.
Yeah, well, war crimes, yeah, well, okay, yeah.
You don't invade a country that hasn't done anything to you.
I can remember back, I've been doing this for a long, a little sidebar, I've been doing this program for a long time, about 43 years now. I think we got started. We used to go down to Washington with a big old U-matic deck. It was great, 100 pounds of equipment to do programs and everything. And I can remember back in the 70s that Paul Wolfowitz and that crowd of what are kind of called the neocons were known, and they were there on the scene, and Rumsfeld, and they were known on the scene, and they were known at that time as like what would be called the lunatic fringe. They were lunatics and not given any credence at that time. But they were saying in the 70s, Mr. Wolfowitz, it was like a lodestar or a Polaris that was a guide to them. We have to invade Iraq. They wanted to invade Iraq, strategic thinking in that neocon coterie. In the 70s they were talking about that. They brought it about in the invasion that actually did occur.
The problem...
Just bring it up. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
well, the problem is that when I first got to the Pentagon, I know some of those characters.
Okay.
From...
The neocons you're talking about?
Yes,
yeah.
From when I was at the Pentagon. You know, you see them creeping out of the White House, out of the State Department. You know, that was nothing new to me.
But Wolfowitz was a real strong proponent of invading Iraq in the 70s.
As the point I'm trying to make is that you have a certain group of people that, for whatever reason or by whatever means, I have a throat cold.
Yeah,
forgive me.
Well, hang in.
They find themselves in positions of some influence in government.
Yeah.
And these people have no business having any type of positions of influence in a democratic form of government.
Well, they get to have influence by having a great deal of money, and then the tides change and things. And now K Street and you know, what is that? Crystal City and the military-industrial complex is mightily informing the entire political process and stuffing millions of dollars into the hands of all the people of Congress with a great, and also the media. They have a great control, being interest in the media mainstream.
The problem, Harold, is that, and some people might get angry at me for saying this, but I'll say it nonetheless.
Do, say it, say it.
The problem with the American people is they're not Europeans. I'll tell you what.
You mean they're from all over the world?
No.
No.
One of the things that I respect about Europeans, I mean, don't get me wrong, they have the same amount of buffoons, idiots, snobs, bigots, just like you have them here in the United States.
Yeah.
But one thing I like about Europeans, you know, they take their politics seriously. Okay. Their elections are not beauty contests. Okay. And they're not really circuses. Okay. If you count out that fellow in Italy, what's his name, Berlusconi. Okay.
Berlusconi. Now, you're talking. I was thinking Mussolini, but I mean,
aside from him, I don't think that you would find what I would call frivolous attitude towards their political life that you find here. Also, their politics in terms of racism, it stops when you talk about the subject of immigration. And it's not so much, some of it might be racism.
Well, they don't have the racism that we did here.
Well, what bothers me the most about our politics here is that, unfortunately, the rich and the powerful, down through the years, have been so adept at playing Americans off against each other that, for example, the Southern phenomenon, where you have white males who are working class and consistently vote Republican.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Why? Because in their minds, they feel that to vote for a party that would be more representative of their interests would be somehow basically getting alongside or standing alongside African Americans.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, I lived in the South. I was stationed with Southerners. I served with them.
Yeah.
I fought with them. Sometimes I even fought against them. I was almost lynched the first time I was in the military.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a whole other story.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I know my country.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is the greatest problem that we have.
Yeah, well, that's what Gunnar Myrdal said. Yeah, racism. That's the biggest. That's the American dilemma, and it's still there, despite all the, despite Martin King. And Malcolm,
in spite of it, we still have a long way to go.
Stokely.
That's one of the good things about this occupation movement.
Okay, good.
That has begun to take place across this country.
Yeah.
Because the average American, some people call us now the 99%ers.
That's interesting. 99%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're starting to realize that we have common interest. I'm not trying to blow the bugle for the Democratic Party per se. The Democratic Party has been guilty of not doing a lot of things, not standing up when they should have stood up. And they have to be held accountable for that. But for any working person to be, or to basically call themselves a conservative / or Republican and be making less than $100,000 a year, that has always boggled my mind. I think it was Bill Maher that made the point that the problem with American democracy is that we, Americans, we don't let the democracy work. We keep voting for people who are diametrically opposed to the interests of working class people.
Okay, or the least among us, certainly. They don't care about what it's called, the gospel say the least among you.
Right.
But they don't, it's all cottoning on to the power that exists.
And see, another problem that we have this crazy idea that this is the land of the American dream, that there are no class distinctions.
Yeah, that's really strange, yeah.
And that, Europeans that I've known who have been over here in the States, and they tell you, that's the craziest thing that they've ever seen. People
that
here,
claim,
we have allowed ourselves to be so, I don't like to use the term brainwashed because it's really not brainwashed, I guess technically, but we have allowed our thought process to be so corrupted as to not see the class distinctions right in front of our face. When you have, and this is what we refer to down at the occupation.
I want to hear all about the details in there because I've not been down yet.
These are the details. You have over 51 million Americans that cannot afford health care.
Right.
You have poverty level rising, going to close to 50 million Americans living in poverty.
In poverty, yeah.
How, where is the unemployment rate at now? Was it over 20 million? I mean, not just talking about the 9%.
Yeah, 9.1.
But when you add it all in,
yeah.
okay, it's it's a little bit over 20 million people.
Up in Harlem, it's higher than that. And in the, you understand?
It's a massacre.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a depression.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to call it a depression,
Well,
not just a recession.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people have asked me, what do I feel about Barack Obama?
Mm-hmm.
I feel that, unfortunately, there were a lot of things that the president should have done that he didn't do.
Well, he had to try to tackle that health care thing, because that son of a gun is a real big cause of a lot of the unbridled greed of the healthcare industry, taking advantage of the fact, even of secular people, they are concerned about their health and about the demise of their life.
Well, see,
and those are things that can be taken advantage of, and they're all out of whack, totally out of whack with what the, no ability to get it generics and that sort of thing, because they're going to make more money.
Well, yeah, well,
that had to be attacked in some way. And you said that many people on health. If the Obamacare is not voted down by the courts, will that cover some of those people?
Yes,
some people will be covered.
It will.
That's an effort. And that had to be addressed. Clinton used to say that was the major issue, so he spent all his time on that healthcare bill.
But to show the naivete and the insanity of the American people, a lot of Americans, no, I won't say a lot, but a large amount of Americans, especially from certain states, are, attacking Obama. And then when you ask them, well, what has the president done that has you so angry? They can't answer you.
No.
Okay?
The anger,
now, hold on. The problem is that, and I know the Obama people will not admit to it, but a lot of this basically deals with race. And that's where I want to get into this other situation. These are leaflets. And I present you with one.
Thank you.
Don't do coke.
Don't do coke. These the Koch brothers.
The Koch brothers
are coming to organize, getting to be the wealthiest people in the country, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And they're very right wing in supporting all that. Yeah.
Well, they're the ones that basically support the Tea Party.
Yeah.
Or I should say, they are the ones that took over the Tea Party movement.
Yeah. You see all the public television programs that come out, Nova and so forth, brought to you by Mr. Koch.
Yeah.
That's it. That's public television.
Yeah. Well, see, here goes the problem. The problem is what they're doing. They are going to the white working class, especially in the South. Their people are basically playing the song that the people in that part of America know best, which is race.
Yeah, right.
Now, here you have the president. And unfortunately, Barack now is turning populist, when the fact is that he should have went into the White House being populist.
Well, he went in and he put his attention on that health care issue. I mean, rather than the jobs thing, the thing that happened in 2008 under the economy had gone tanking under Mr. Bush and everything, and they all recognized that it was 1929 or something, and that it had been the excesses, and it wasn't just the it wasn't just the Republicans, but it was the Republicans and the Democrats and the system. But it got worse after Mr. Reagan, 30 years. But the excesses of that had led to a fundamental challenge to the economic order, and that it was going to fall apart, and you were going to be able, if you didn't have a huge stimulus or some sort of a Keynesian activism to save the capitalism from its demise and so forth, the system was going to fall apart and spiral down into a great worldwide massive depression, worse than the depression of the 1930s. So they had to put all kinds of attention to that. And how the hell the people who caused it was the bankers who caused that, and the big banks who caused that in large measure. Also Mr. Bush, a huge tax cut to the super wealthy, wars in Iraq and Iran that weren't on the books. They were all part of this deficit. They built it all up, and then, so it was their fault, but beyond blaming the Republicans or the Democrats or something, that was a situation that had to be dealt with, and it's hard to get credit for having averted something that isn't there, but you could have had 20% unemployment, 25%. You could have had depression-level things, and the whole world economy imploding. They recognize that if they didn't shore it up.
Yeah, well,
so
Harold,
they
the only
saved
problem is,
capitalism,
though,
and
that
then he gets blamed for the troubles that were created by the thing that came before.
Right, that's because as a nation, most of us don't use critical thinking skills.
Well, I would say Mr. Mencken. Do you remember Mencken? He said that
Oh,
nobody
H.L., yeah, H.L., yeah.
H.L. Mencken said nobody ever went broke underestimating the intelligence of the American people.
Yeah,
That may be or may not be, but also the American people's getting hip, maybe, or something. But it wasn't just the immediate thing. It wasn't just what Obama did. They are able to blame how it can happen. I just was at a thing with Gerald Nadler the other night at an event, and he spelled it out to me that when Roosevelt came in after 29, there had been a period of time, but were the people who caused the 1929 crash and everything were able to blame the president who was trying to pick up, like cleaning the Aegean stable, the mess that it had been, able to blame the president who was trying to clean up the mess for the problem that was created by those who are making the accusation, the way the Republicans are. And that's what seems to be going on, and they seem to have been able to sell it partly because they have access to all those lobbying firms that in military-industrial complex that they have at K Street and Crystal City and all that. And the Koch brothers are leading that effort.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one of the purposes for this occupation.
But point made. Let me make one more point, Robert. I think that the problem is much more systemic. It's not just that one president did this or that party did this. It's a systemic challenge to the system that's been in place, I would say, since we came out of the caves. There's always been some person who had the power to rule over everybody else and everything like that. And now it's that way, and it's ridiculous to call the United States a democracy, or I don't think it's possible to have a democracy where economically it's a total plutocracy. It's all owned, the assets are all owned by a tiny plutocratic class. Everybody else are like serfs on a feudal estate, and you've got an inherent unoperative system relative to the future that's now coming. We got a new capability that we can't realize. It's a systemic thing that encompasses both political parties and the overall system, and our leadership, and our intellectual leadership or otherwise, hasn't come up with a solution that gives us a system that the future requires. That's a different take on it.
I disagree, and I'll tell you what the problem is.
You can blame both political parties.
I'll tell you what the problem is.
Or the political elite.
The problem is that you do have people. The first thing you have to recognize is that market capitalism, the way the average American thinks about market capitalism, is as dead as Julius Caesar.
You think, wait a minute, you think market capitalism is dead as you, okay, go ahead and spell it out.
Yeah, market capitalism, as we think of it in this country, that day has passed. It is impossible in a global economic world to be the one nation that practices or holds strict adherence to market-based capitalism.
Market fundamentalism, maybe? Or no, yeah.
Well, let me put you like this.
Like the Friedman.
I think that we're going to have to basically go to a more socialistic form of government. Excuse me, a more socialistic economic system. See, that's another problem. And this is the fault of the ruling class, the wealthy class, however you want to put it. This idea that they equate democracy with market capitalism, all right? That's nonsense, okay?
Thank you.
Democracy
there should be a distinction, yeah, okay.
Democracy is a political system, okay? Capitalism is an economic theory, okay? You can have democracy without having market-based capitalism.
Okay.
You don't have to constantly talk about the two as if they're tied at the hip.
Right.
And that is the biggest problem with the American mentality. And that's one of the reasons why it is so difficult. And Obama knows this. Okay, he knows this, and a lot of other people. I would dare say you have a few intelligent Republicans that know this. The problem is that, especially with the ruling class, the urge to try and move us to a different plateau in terms of economic theory. Folks in this country, most of them, they are so programmed into believing in this crazy, evil, inhuman market capitalist system that we've been living under, that they say, oh God, if you take us anyplace else, then you're a communist. You're another Hitler, like the names they've been calling Barack.
Yeah.
And that...
Or a socialist, yeah.
Socialism is in Europe, those are socialist countries.
Yeah, well, they would say Europe is not a good model. We're better. We're exceptional. We're a capitalist nation, and look at how advanced we are, and we're exceptional.
How can we be advanced when our people are dumber, our health care is worse, and we pay more for it?
Well, I don't know. They can do it. Did you ever see the way the football teams are rooted for, like in Europe? We're number one. This idea that we're number one, no matter if you're in rags, but we're number one.
Well,
and
see,
that's something people want to hear.
That shows
and they got a metaphor.
That shows the hypocrisy and the sheer backwardness
Every nation
that we have here in America.
Yeah.
NFL, you know how they pick the teams?
You mean the football teams?
Yeah, at the end of every season. The worst football team, the team that comes in the last place, gets the first pick of all the new draftees.
Well, that sounds like, okay, that's interesting. I didn't realize, I have not
They
followed
practice
football.
socialism.
Oh, and
all right?
With that one thing,
Yeah, they practice socialism because they know that by them letting the last place team get the pick of the best players coming out of the colleges, and the draft, it brings up the level of
okay, that's one example of it. But I also know when I was a kid or something, we used to. You now have it's across the board. You got all the money going to a few people at the top. That's one thing that's really there. The capital assets are all owned. Actually, they get different statistics and so forth. But it's really the capital assets are all owned really in any effect term by the upper 5%. And then they've got the star system. They got star systems in baseball. They're getting overwhelming salaries and everything for the star, or star system in entertainment, overwhelming. And then you got a lot of people that are just wannabes and that kind of thing. It's not democratic. It's geared toward a star system where the money is going to those who are the star, perceived star, or those who have the advantage of having accumulated capital by where they can continue to make more.
To take us back to
so that's a model that's in place now.
Again, to take us back to the occupation.
Of Iraq?
No, the occupation of Wall
downtown.
Street.
Oh, I'm sorry. We were talking about Iraq before.
This, what you're referring to, that's one of the problems that brought this movement into creation.
That's right.
Because we have a situation now. Actually, the figure you gave just now, I'm more comfortable saying the upper 5% as opposed to saying the upper 1 or upper 2%.
Well, I know the tax cut that Krugman's written a lot on it. The tax cut that it was a signature thing for Mr. Bush, the second, second President Bush, came in a singular event was a $1.3 trillion tax cut, the overwhelming advantage of which didn't even go just to the 1% or the 1/10 of 1%. The overwhelming advantage went to the upper 100th of 1% of the population. 400 people owe more wealth than half the population of the country. It's concentrated enormously like never before at the top, and they don't want to touch that. It's going to become a singular issue in the election, I would presume.
Well, I don't know, because here goes the problem. They are doing their best, and see, this is where I break with a lot of people on the left. Because I'm the first one to say Yeah, especially in terms of foreign policy, Barack has definitely let me down, okay? In terms of domestic policy, there are a lot of things that he should have spoken on, or I'm glad to see that he is now speaking on them.
He's
all right?
starting to move. Do you feel that? Yeah.
I
He's
see that.
starting to come on
But see, here
strong.
goes the problem. You've got the right working as hard as they can to try and disenchant so many people about Barack. And then you look at their stable, who they have. Well, they have a racist Perry, an ignorant racist is that, okay, Perry. You have this guy, Romney.
Mormon.
Well, I mean, I have no problem, you know, his religion is his business. But I'm
Well,
very
the
leery of
Mormons
any guy that tells me that a woman who gave birth is equal to a corporation.
Yeah.
Because this is the guy that says corporations are people.
Well, that's
Okay.
the Supreme Court has said that ought to be questioned. A lot of people are questioning that.
Yeah, and the final, wait, hold up, and the final guy, he's supposed to be the right wing's answer to what a black man's supposed to be. What's his first name? Howard Kane?
Kane, yeah, they're one of
Yeah.
his grandpa's pizza or something, or
Yeah, Godfather Pizza.
Godfather, yeah.
Yeah, the gospel singer.
Yeah.
You know, this guy, you know, is a joke. As a black man, as far as I'm concerned, he's an embarrassment. He has no foreign policy. He has no domestic policy, for that matter. And
Well, you don't know who is going to run. Miss Palin says she's not going to do it. She thinks that she could do better by not being president.
well, she could do better by just going back to Alaska.
Yeah. Anyway.
You know,
Yeah, but okay, you're making the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we always remember it was Danny Schechter. No, it was Lenny Brenner wrote the book, the Lesser Evil, the Democratic Party. You're always
Yeah.
ending up voting for the lesser of two evils. You know.
Well,
and so you never have had a. Has there ever been a party that you could really believe in and everything in terms of serving the interests of the people?
I
I'm
think
not sure.
FDR,
Maybe
FDR
yeah.
foot that bill.
But he was being blamed by the Republicans, or trying to be. He was able to be blamed. No, he was not able to be blamed effectively politically by the people who had caused the depression, for the depression that he was trying to save capitalism from, that they had created. Do you understand? Now they're attacking and say the reason that everything's so messed up, and they will do nothing. They will vote for nothing. The Republican Party will vote for nothing. It's just no, 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 no.
Well, what's the sad thing is,
and they would like to see it's almost as though they would like to see the economy crash so that they could win and they can blame Obama for the depression.
Well, it's sad that the American people
in
can't
large
see.
measure by them.
It's sad that the American people
are so gullible.
Yeah, and that's I think it's a crying shame.
Yeah. Now the thing is, I'm taking it from the standpoint of it being systemic. I think we got large problems. We got large problems beyond that. I think the idea that it's perfectly all right for a few people to own all the capital assets, all the buildings and everything. They all own the private sector. They own everything. And then everybody else, the only way they're going to be relating to the economy is to have, and they'll set up the institutions and the structures and so forth because they've got the money and everything, and they'll own everything. And then everybody else is just a worker on their estate. It's sort of like a slave on the estate that's owned by the slaveholder.
Exactly.
Or the owner of all the assets. And they seem to accept that, and they don't question the fact that how come it got to be a point where the ownership of all of the assets, which are increasingly responsible for production, came to be so concentrated in such a small group of the people. Why are not, if the technology and the technological instruments and the extended consciousness is what's responsible for production, why are they able to sing this siren song that it's so important for the people to work or have a job in order to delve out some demand or buying power to the people through them having some job function on the estate where the technology is
Well, you have
producing the wealth, and that's all like a combine.
Harold, you got to
It's all
remember
owned by
something, though.
somebody.
You have to keep in mind something
And they're
else.
hoodwinking the people and the left, if I may, even Marxists, with the labor theory of value, how important it is for people to work and the work ethic, and you get your identity by what you do and all of that.
See, the
and
problem
they're able
is
to sell that.
that
and I think
it is,
it's
the
now,
work ethic is important. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, I like
but
the work
problem
ethic when
that no, Harold, the problem I have is that the wealthy, if you're talking about the nation state, this nation state called America, then it should be obvious to working class Americans that the wealthy, for the most part, in corporate America have betrayed this nation state we call America.
They betrayed,
for the most part, yes.
Well,
betrayed.
they always have. They did. The emperors of Rome did. The people were serfs. The kings of the feudal period did. They were serfs.
No, I understand that.
So it still holds.
I understand that.
But
what I'm saying is here,
there's something new. That's the point.
What's new is I'm just talking about America now.
Well, all right.
Okay.
But we're related to the
here
world,
in America, all right, what they have done, they have decided that they don't have to pay any taxes to keep up this society. And the way that they've gone about that is by spreading this malicious rhetoric to the working people, to the masses, that taxes are bad, all right? I believe it was Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes that said, my taxes are the price I pay for civilization.
Yeah, well, the income tax was up 92% under Eisenhower, and it's been up high a lot of the time. Now it's down.
Exactly.
It's very low, but they're still saying there shouldn't be any, and they really are market fundamentalists, and people who are fundamentalists, and they say they would like to just, like Norquist would like to bury the government in a bathtub and never have it rear its ugly head again, that the government is just gets in the way of the beautiful entrepreneurial development.
Well, you know what I like
capitalism.
to do for Mr. Norquist? I like to see Mr. Norquist walk down the street one night, or better yet, no, I wouldn't like to see that. Let me backtrack. Because it's wrong. My mom always taught me
your
it's
mind shouldn't
wrong
go there. Yeah.
to wish
Thank
evil.
you for backing away from that thought.
However, someone needs to remind Mr. Norquist that in his nice gated community where he lives at, okay, they're in Northern Virginia, that when him or his neighbors have a problem or any type of danger, they don't, they might have a private security guard on premises. But overall, they have as a matter of fact, the police department in Northern Virginia, in those counties, are more than professional, more
and the
than
fire,
adequate.
Okay?
If his house catches on fire, he is not waiting for any private volunteer fire
Some of the
department.
wackos would say you shouldn't go put out the fire unless.
Well, that's Tennessee. Those are the
Yeah.
Republicans in a couple of counties in Tennessee.
It's runaway absurd, but it's also the working. We keep saying working people, and the thing is that it's okay for them to work hard in order to get money to feed the kiddies. It's okay for them to have to work. The people that have the capital assets don't have to work.
No,
they get
don't.
richer as they sleep because they own. Let's say
they make money off of money. That's the difference between
that's getting
a working
richer
American.
as you think.
Yeah.
If you let's say you own a combine, and the combine can move across the field and produce 50,000 barrels of wheat, and you don't even have a driver, and they're still going to try. It's run by a computer now, and it can do it. So the combine is owned by somebody. Now it's perfectly all right for the rich to own that combine, producing all that. And what you're going to try and do is get some little trickle of something that's going to come to a guy who maybe could displace the computer that's running it as a driver. To get the labor involvement in the productive process, it's going from where it used to be labor was all relevant to production. to where it's capital instruments are creating the wealth. So the
Listen.
wealth goes to them, and the people are still buy on to the idea, I've got to have a job
Let me say this.
on the estate,
Yeah.
all owned by these rich people, and don't talk to me about having any ownership, private sector or otherwise, of that combine as a means for getting income the way the rich get income. They've sold them a bill of goods on how wonderful it is to work on masses
Let me make
estate.
this point while we still have time.
And that's coming to an end. That's why I think it's going on across the world.
Another problem that we have, and see, in America, this is an acute problem, because Americans have a very difficult time. They don't like people that ask questions, because they don't like to think.
Well, I think we ought to
Okay.
question the whole system.
I agree.
And I think that's what's percolating up now.
See-
They're not going to accept the idea that only way for them to get money to give food to the kids is to be a bootblack on the estate that's all owned by a tiny plutocratic class.
Another problem that we have,
Or
is
whatever
that-
is approved by them that do
Another
own.
problem that we have, especially in the time of dwindling employment, and it's this.
It's structurally unemployed.
What
Lord Keynes
happens?
warned about that.
What happens now, for example, with so many people who are unemployed? The right says they want to end food stamps.
Well, yeah, right.
The right says they want to end unemployment insurance. So therefore, you now have a situation where you have millions upon millions of people who are unemployed. They have no way of getting food.
No, they have no way of getting money. Money. The people who have owned the combine get money because they own a capital
I'm talking
instrument.
about here in the city, for example.
I know.
Okay?
No, but do you understand the difference?
No, I understand what you're saying.
It's
but
the
I'm
capital instruments that are creating the wealth.
Okay, but what we're talking
Increasingly,
about
that's the trend.
right here in New York, for
Yeah,
example,
okay, yeah.
what happens if the right gets their way and they end unemployment insurance?
Well, they would like to do that.
Okay.
Norquist would like to
The
have
question is, what happens to the people?
Well,
How are they going to live?
Well, the people will become serfs, begging for
Well,
food.
wait, we have no serfs. We're in the city.
Well, yeah, okay.
That's
no.
what I'm saying.
No,
we have no serfs.
What they would
We're
become
in
is
the city.
totally beholden to the few, like the kings they used to be beholden to as serfs on a feudal estate.
But see,
that's
here
where
goes the
they would go,
problem.
and that would be the aim. And they would then say, well, we're going, they would say that.
Well, we're
and-
not even going to be that well off, because what the corporate people have done, what the wealthy have done, they have basically said, to hell with the land of my birth.
Of course.
To hell with the land of my citizenship.
Well, they can do it now. They couldn't do it in the past.
Right, and see, that's the point that
Well,
I'm
that's
trying
because you
to
got
make.
containerization came along. You got an internet that links everybody up. If you can make 300% more
I
profit
yeah, Harold,
across
I
the
understand
ocean,
that,
all
but
that.
the
So
question
a guy's
is-
not going to just.
Right, but the question
He couldn't
is,
do it. He has a board of directors. He has a responsibility to make an
okay,
earning. You can do
what
it more
happens
in
to
China
the people,
or somewhere
though?
else.
What happens to the people right
Well,
here
they
in
don't
New
care
York?
about the people.
No, but I understand that.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, what, how should I say, what outlets are going to be open to the American people?
Well, we got it. Now they're going to be pushing this debt limit and all that stuff, Greece and all that, and it's going to be here. And what will happen? The people will start rioting, or the people will start. And then what they'll do is buck up the police, and that creates a lot of jobs for bully boys, like for quasi-fascist things. And it will come into the fascist state that it actually is, and it'll come into recognition. But they haven't got. I mean,
you shouldn't. You're missing the point, though, because remember now, when Hitler brought the fascist state into being in Germany, all right, he fed his people.
He did indeed. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're not feeding people here. Okay. What I suspect is that these people on the right, who are, as far as I'm concerned, for the most part, in the pay of these wealthy people, they have, and that's another problem, they have no idea what the hell they're doing. They just have a certain set
Market
of beliefs.
fundamentalism. Yeah.
and that's all they have. They have nothing else.
Yeah.
This black guy running for, on the Republican ticket, or trying to get on the Republican ticket for President Kane, he has no idea.
Well,
And I ask myself, I'm finding myself asking the question, how did this guy ever run a business as dumb as he is? Because you listen to some of the things that he says. You already, you know, it really hurts me that my countrymen, so many of them, I guess I probably won't be going into politics because the way some of the things I say, but the truth be the truth. Too many of the American people are just, I don't want to say dumb, but I will say they have no acquaintance with critical thinking. How can you, first you're going to accuse the present occupant of the White House for creating economic dislocation and unemployment, and then in the same breath, without missing a beat, you accuse the people who are demonstrating against the unemployment for being lazy. You
well,
see
it's
what I'm
called,
saying?
it's like an ad campaign, and they're going to get their ad account, and they've got all the money to buy the ads and to buy the minds of the people. But it's also cross-party, and my suggestion is it's structural. It's not a matter of they have to face this thing that the way in which things are produced, goods and services. You get an algorithm that can put 50,000 people out of work. You can't get them back on the line. You can't distribute demand to the people the way we have through work. People come off the farm, they go to an assembly line in Detroit, and that goes through the services.
So essentially what you're saying is that you are going to, in this American society, we have not faced the fact that we are going to have to begin to give people some type of living wage.
No, that's not what I say at all.
To survive.
I don't say that. What you have to do is not, it's structural unemployment. That's the point. That's what Lord Keynes said. And what it is you're going to have some way for the way the capital is formed to hoist capitalism on its own petard. It loves private property, doesn't like the government. It likes the private sector. The private sector, everybody should own. The left just goes along saying, it's so great to be a worker on your estate. They don't, what they're going to do is they're going to say, it's so wonderful, this private property thing. Private property and capital should be formed in new investment in a way where it's democratized. The left is all enthralled to how wonderful it is to be begging or working on the estate where everything is set up by those who own, and that's the trend. So I think they're going to have to just start arguing for capital formation in a way that democratizes this wonderful thing, private property. They won't go near that because of their surplus labor theories of value they get from Marx or from the left, how wonderful all the government is and can do it. And I think that's the major problem that's being confronted on the planet. You can't let that system go. You're going to have to get a system that's open to involving money coming to people by their having ownership of technological instruments of production. You don't have to do anything for it.
Here goes the problem.
Well, there's a lot of problems in that, but it's a
well, I know, but we're talking
thing.
about the most basic problem.
Well, we're talking about
the basic needs of man: food, clothing, shelter.
Yes.
Right now, you have millions of Americans who are losing their shelter, losing any way of getting food.
Why are we letting them do that? Why are we letting them just do that? The left, the main problem are the intellectuals on the left. That's the main problem. Sticking to this idea that it's perfectly all right for the system to exist where a few people own all the assets. If you own, you've got collateral to get more and more and more. And why do they let that continue? And why do the politicians let that continue? Why do the people let that continue?
I would not blame the left, number one.
No, I say
number two, you're asking the same non-critical thinking American people
Well, I think that's the basis of a lot of critical thinking. If they get down to the root causes rather than the propaganda things that are used in order to steer people in one way or another, they're steering in the wrong way.
That's part of the problem with the politics in this country. And that's something else that has to be looked upon. But the basic problem that we're facing right now is what happens next November.
Well,
that's
okay,
the problem
in a
that
certain
we're
sense,
facing
yeah,
right
that's
now.
right. That is,
Okay?
we're in the election mode now.
Yeah.
And Mr. Obama gave a talk today. I don't know where we go except to support Obama. I mean, you can't suspect anything coming out of that Republican Party, it would seem to me. The people and the thing downtown is questioning the bankers. That's good. You're questioning fundamentally and put them on the spot for a system that is unoperable, even though it's benefiting them. Why do we let them just get away with it? That's what my point is.
Because
of owning everything.
Remember a while ago, I brought up the point that comparing European voters with American voters is really apples and oranges. Why? Because Americans allow the rich and certain politicians to get away with things that they wouldn't dare do in Europe.
Anyway, we only got a couple minutes left. How is it going? Is it growing down there, downtown?
It's growing.
Are there more and more people? Is it going across the country?
Yes.
Is there spreading across the country?
Yes.
Is it going to Ames? Is it going to Ann Arbor? Is it going to other places?
It is
Do you think it's going to grow a mass discontent where real critical thinking can take place to question the system fundamentally?
I think that.
Or will it die out when it gets cold?
I don't think it will ever die out.
Okay.
The question is, will the masses out there of American people, will they pick up the torch that we have lifted here in Wall Street?
No,
now hold on a second. As I said, it's spreading in cities across the country.
That's good news, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good news.
Yeah.
That's good news. And if President Obama is smart, this is one time that he will get out in front of the headwinds.
Do you see this thing going on in Wall Street as a counterblast, as they would say in literature and so forth, to the Tea Party thing that happened? You had a lot of discontent. You have angst being so thick all over the world. And this Tea Party thing came out, sort of know-nothing party type kind of thing, giving support to the right. Is this the thing that's coming out more or less for the people in terms of the traditional left representing the masses of the people against the bureaucrat? Is it on that order, right?
Yeah.
So you don't see a lot of right-wing nuts down there talking about Tea Party
No,
stuff?
you're not.
Oh, okay.
You're not.
That's
Thank
good.
God.
That's good because
Thank
they've
God.
been in the ascendancy, haven't they?
Well, I have no, look, well, actually, you know, any poll you look at will tell you that the Tea Party
1 minute.
has gotten less and less popular in American politics. And why politicians still give credence to the Tea Party, that's something I have a hard time trying to figure out.
Okay.
Except that a lot of politicians, unfortunately, especially national politicians, they're kind of like generals. They're still fighting the last war.
Okay, Bobby.